Coming up on Now See This.
Fly it, fly it, fly it!
Aggressive rodeo riders prove that to win, you gotta take the bull by the horns. When a high-seas smuggler is chased to shore,
Bring me around, we get knocked!
his cargo unloads itself. And a car thief tries to keep a low profile, but ends up making a big splash. Everyone's hopping mad, skipping town, and jumping for joy.
Reactor!
Get ready to take the leap. Think you've seen it all? Now see this. Base jumpers. People who like life on the edge. Diving off bridges, cliffs, and anything else that offers them a rush. Some are pure adrenaline junkies, while others get into the sport to conquer their inner demons.
I got into base jumping because I'm afraid of heights. Heights scare me. They scare me to no end, but I don't let my fears control me.
And they don't. Bud Connor is an avid base jumper and part of a tight-knit community that travels the United States to compete in a sport that goes hand in hand with danger. Today they gather at Moab, Utah, where Bud helps judge the competition, appropriately named the Tombstone Challenge.
See ya! Yeah!
These men and women live to push the envelope, and they go to great lengths to record their exploits. But there can be no thrills without danger. And today, several competitors will be reminded just how unpredictable this sport can be. Competitor Seth Blake goes off perfectly. But his chute gets tangled and doesn't fully deploy until he's only 50 feet from the ground. He lands hard. Minutes later, Seth walks away, shaken, but alive. For the moment, the jumpers are dodging disaster. Eric Santee, a professional skydiving instructor with over 400 successful base jumps to his credit, goes next.
It was my fourth jump of the day. I was a little fatigued from hiking.
4, 3, 2.
Reactor!
As soon as Eric opens his chute, he knows something is terribly wrong.
Strike.
I thought I was gonna die.
Fly it, fly it, fly it, fly it!
He wasn't overreacting. Such a mishap usually means a long, hard fall, followed by instant death. But Eric bounces off the cliff, somehow steers away, and lands safely. It takes him a moment to realize what almost happened.
A gentleman come up to me and said, "Wow," he said, "I've seen that happen a couple of times, and you're the first person I've seen live."
Eric is the second jumper of the day to get lucky.
Strike.
However, Bud Connor will not be so fortunate. After spending hours judging other jumpers, Bud is ready for some action. But the day itself has been full of bad omens.
This is Friday the 13th. I have 13 base jumps at the time.
He goes off perfectly, but a series of small mistakes puts Bud on a collision course with a rock.
One of the steering toggles that we used to turn the parachute with released from the Velcro and put me into a turn right away. This is bad. I know this is bad, and I know that I have now made a mistake.
He doesn't have time to correct the mistake and smacks into a massive boulder. And here's a horrific sound.
As I bounced away from that, I heard my bone break. I heard my femur break because, bones breaking make a very distinct noise, especially when they're your own.
Bud grabs a patch of grass and hangs on. If he hadn't, the New York native would have plunged further, and his fracture count would have skyrocketed. Still, the pain is intense. As Bud waits for help to arrive,
If you ever want to know what pain's like, break your femur.
the first on the scene are fellow base jumpers. 6 men carry him down, as one stays on the landing, belaying the safety rope in case they stumble. The ride down is not an easy one. The ambulance finally arrives, and he's whisked away to a nearby hospital. After reconstructive surgery, Bud begins his long, arduous journey to rehabilitation. But not even a brush with death could dampen his enthusiasm for the sport. In fact, it was the first thing on his mind after the crash.
I knew, even while I was laying there with a broken leg, that I'm not done. I'm going to jump again.
Only 7 months after the bone-breaking collision, Bud is back to base jumping off this 700-foot bridge. And Bud's willing to admit he's more than a little nervous.
I was so terrified. I couldn't hear the roar of the crowd over the roar of my knees knocking.
He does a perfect launch. And floats safely into West Virginia's New River Gorge, overcoming once again his worst fear. With time to reflect, Bud Connor looks back on the fateful jump off the Tombstone Cliffs. He sums up very succinctly what happened to him that day.
I was overconfident.
It's something he will never let happen again. If you didn't know better, you might think this speedboat was out for a pleasure cruise off the Florida Keys. But it's actually a smuggling ship, and authorities fear it could be hauling a contraband of drugs, or maybe even weapons. But the boat is actually smuggling human cargo. Cuban refugees who have paid $10,000 each for the pilot to smuggle them to U.S. shores. It's a perilous journey. The boat has been modified to carry 320 gallons of fuel, making it an unsafe floating gas tank. But for the Cubans fleeing the oppression of their homeland, the risks are well worth it. After hours of white-knuckled high-velocity flight, the boat finally reaches the seaside city of Key Colony Beach. Out of the ship's cramped hidden hold, 21 men, women, and children scramble forth and scatter inland. Within moments, the sky is full of helicopters searching for the refugees. Instead of trying to hide, the refugees appear boldly jubilant. They're even unfazed by a curious rollerblader who tags along like a 21st century welcome wagon. Moments later, the group enters a quiet neighborhood. The situation grows tense when police show up. But then, something strange happens. Instead of fleeing from police, the refugees turn and run toward the officers. That's because they know about the U.S. government's dry foot policy, which offers Cubans who make it to shore health benefits and nearly $9,000 in aid. Had the boat been caught at sea, this would have been another story. Then the refugees would have been sent back to Cuba, which explains their need for such a risky, high-speed flight to U.S. soil.
Turn and face the car? Yeah. Okay.
However, there's no loophole protecting the boat pilot who brought them. He's arrested and charged with smuggling. Within an hour, most of the 21 refugees have been rounded up in front of a local apartment building. An impromptu celebration takes place as they reunite with their families and loved ones. The mood remains upbeat, even when the Border Patrol arrives to collect IDs and take the refugees into custody. At this point, there's only one word ringing in the Cubans' minds.
Free.
The refugees file willingly into the customs van, eager for the next part of their adventure to begin. After all, the trials to come are nothing compared to the perils they just endured on their long flight to freedom. In Columbus, Ohio, a college-aged repeat offender is about to get schooled. Months ago, this suspect was kicked out of a local university for spending too much time on extracurricular activities, namely carjacking. Today, he returned to campus to steal this car. Now police try to keep up, but at 115 miles per hour, this suspect quickly leaves them in the dust. But while this student-turned-thief may not see any troopers in his rearview mirror, sometimes it's all about the cops you don't see.
During the entire pursuit, I was the acting supervisor at the Mansfield post, and I was monitoring it by the use of radio.
Miles from the actual chase, a veteran of several pursuits, Lieutenant James Wernicke is at his command post coordinating troopers' positions.
Our procedures state the supervisor will monitor the pursuit where the radio base station is.
Wernicke directs backup units into position, and within minutes, cops are back on the suspect's tail. With troopers closing in, the suspect tries to fake them out by pulling off the freeway, then heading right back on. He darts between cars with inches to spare, but not all of his moves are near misses.
There were 1 or 2 minor crashes, and naturally we stopped and made sure that nobody was injured.
Officers won't risk another collision, however minor. With the lieutenant's go-ahead, deputies stop traffic, ready their tire-shredding spike strips, and make their move. In slow motion, you can see that the deputies can't get their stop sticks under the suspect's tires in time. However, Wernicke is experienced and knows to have a second unit ready and waiting. The suspect swerves around the second set of spikes. He rips into the dirt shoulder and nearly crashes into a road sign. But the driver's tires are still intact.
The suspect knew that we had the stop sticks and was able to avoid the deployment of those.
Apparently, the carjacker's got some experience himself, and he's using it. The cruisers can't seem to get into position fast enough, but Wernicke's radio moves at the speed of sound. He calls ahead to the next county's patrol post, giving them ample time to set a trap. The suspect doesn't see it until it's too late.
In the very last instance, the officer was set up on the interstate. He had enough time to let out his drawstring, which was attached to the road spikes. They were laying hidden in the weeds.
With a sputter of smoke, the driver's speed drops dramatically. Finally, his back tire shreds off the rim, putting his car out of commission. But the chase isn't over.
As soon as he pulled over, he was out of the vehicle.
The suspect tears off into the woods with a throng of officers at his heels. Approximately 2 minutes later, Wernicke is alerted of a successful arrest. His position as a coordinator was essential to bringing the suspect down quickly, but he's not taking the credit.
If it wasn't for good, solid decision-making and driving by our officers, we would not have stopped him.
And even though the lieutenant's experience enabled him to direct multiple cruisers through 3 counties in the most dangerous conditions, when he finds out why the guy ran, he's reminded that you've never really seen or heard it all.
His story to us was he stole the vehicle. He had an appointment with his probation officer in Cleveland, and he had to make the appointment. He didn't want to be late, and he was going to do whatever it took to get to that location.
In Mexico, sometimes you ride the bull, and sometimes the bull rides you. Predating its American counterpart by decades, the rodeo is Mexico's national pastime. Competitions take place every weekend year-round, and with the heart-pounding action of the bucking bulls, coupled with the fun-loving festivities that surround the rodeo, it's easy to see why it's so popular. But it is a dangerous sport, and it takes a special breed of person to face down a 2,000-pound bull. Participants have to be fearless. They have to be strong. And quite frequently, they have to be drunk. The only real qualifications for riders are that they have some experience, are over the age of 18, and can take a serious beating. And make no mistake, they do take a beating. Some riders get spun, while others get flung. Some get the bull by the horns, and others by the hooves. Sometimes both bull and rider take a dive, and only one gets up. This rider can't get out of the ring fast enough, so his bull gives him a little help. But it's not always the rider that gets thrashed. A spectator scrambling for a closer view of the show can quickly find himself as the main attraction. But even though bucking, bumping, and dumping may be the norm, not every run ends with a crash. A lot of riders go the distance. Still, with others not even making it out of the gate. It's obvious this sport is not for the weak. But organizers do care about their riders' well-being. That's why they have a safety checklist. Number 1, they tape up the bull's horns. And that's it. End of list. Not surprisingly, injuries are common. But the rewards can be great. Top riders can earn up to 50,000 pesos. And the winners are picked by the audience, making this one of the few genuine spectator sports. And while it may not be the World Cup or the Super Bowl, Mexican rodeos do have their own big-name stars. And the bigger the name, the bigger the crowd. But it really doesn't matter if you're a celebrity in the saddle or a rookie wrangler. Eventually, everyone gets thrown. There's nothing like a cool swim on a warm day. But the truth is, this guy's in some seriously hot water.
He's still in the run. It's been a chase that's been going all across the north side.
30 minutes ago, what should have been a routine traffic stop turned into a high-speed chase around the north side of Indianapolis, Indiana.
I ran the plate, and it came back that the vehicle was stolen. I thought, surely that I ran the wrong plate or something, so I ran it again.
But the diligent deputy Tiffany Parker was right. The car was stolen. She pulled it over, but the driver was in no mood to chat. So he made the first of many bad decisions.
Told the driver to shut the ignition off the car and throw the keys on top of the hood. As soon as he brought his hands back in, he took off on me.
He may foolishly believe he can outrun the law, but his 2 passengers are smarter. Moments ago, they bailed out when he slowed down at an intersection. Now he's alone, leading the deputy from highways to tree-lined suburban streets and onto this busy thoroughfare.
Looks like he's going to blow through this stop sign.
Running red lights and narrowly missing oncoming cars. Now Deputy Parker's supervisor joins in and tries to keep the chase from getting out of hand.
With the pursuit occurring in the middle of the day, being a supervisor, I have to be a lot more aware of public safety. It is lunchtime, there are additional people out and about.
But nothing slows the suspect down, because he's still under the thick-headed delusion he can outrun 8 police cruisers and over 20 support units.
There are 30 different cruisers involved in the pursuit.
The fugitive finally finds a wide boulevard where he can put some distance between himself and the law. Only to discover an officer with a tire-shredding spike strip waiting for him. He mindlessly presses onward, losing his bumper but not his will to run. It's a fearless choice, but not a wise one.
When he drove into the pond, I thought, we got you now.
That's when he makes his most brainless decision of the day. He decides to run, or rather swim.
Once he crashes the car, he tries to get out of it and the door clips his hip. He then jumps into the retention pond, swims across.
There are few, if any, cases where anyone actually evades arrest by swimming away, especially when they're surrounded by police.
7 or 8 police cars pulled in right now as he's trying to swim across this little lake here.
After leading them through 2 counties and 4 townships for half an hour, the suspect now makes his first and only wise choice. He surrenders.
We always try and imagine, what was this guy thinking when he's flying through the air, getting ready to hit this water? You know, I know what I've been thinking, and give up, and you know, the game's over.
That's exactly what his 2 passengers realized early on in the pursuit.
I can hear the passengers in the car screaming at him, stop the car, stop the car.
The 2 teens were questioned and released without charge. The driver didn't fare as well. After being treated for minor injuries, he's arraigned on a host of charges, including auto theft, reckless endangerment, and even driving without a valid license. Now he'll spend the next 1.5 years in a detention facility, where there are no games, no swimming pools, but plenty of time to think about all his bad choices.
If someone runs from the police, then obviously they're being very stupid.
Timisoara, Romania. An attempt to upgrade an entire neighborhood has become one man's death trap. Hours ago, the walls of this massive trench being dug for a new natural gas pipeline collapsed. Official rescue teams rushed to the scene. The medics patiently wait for the man's extraction. The engineers discuss ways to get him out before the man loses his grip on life. But strangely enough, the only people doing any work are the civilians, co-workers, and bystanders, even a local policeman, while all the official rescuers do is watch. Fearing another collapse, officials are paralyzed, unsure of what to do next. But while they wait, his friends and fellow townsmen work feverishly to free him. They toil relentlessly to unearth the man, but will they get him out in time? One bystander offers his prized truck to grassroots rescuers. They hook a cable to his bumper and attempt to remove the heaviest debris from around the hole. But it doesn't have enough power to do the job. Officials call for a crane. It can do the work, but once again, the manpower is provided by civilians and one lone policeman. Finally, 2 official workers brave the threat of another cave-in and join the effort. After an exhausting 4 hours, the friends, co-workers, and bystanders managed to pry the victim out of his earthen coffin. As they gently lift him out, the officials now spring into action. Medics get him onto solid ground and stabilize the man's fractured neck. He's later taken to a hospital, and luckily, he survives. But it was the valiant effort of his friends, co-workers, and concerned bystanders that saved him, proving that you don't have to be a professional to save someone's life. You just have to be willing to get your hands dirty. Toronto, Canada. When firefighters arrived to put out this house fire, their highest priority was to get the home's occupants to safety, even the pets. But there's one 4-legged visitor the firemen have overlooked: a full-grown raccoon trapped on the roof. The poor animal is overwhelmed by all the noise and smoke. Meanwhile, the roof is getting hotter beneath its paws. The firemen's first instinct is to let nature determine the animal's fate, but they ultimately decide not to let even one life be lost in the blaze. One rescuer tries to coax the critter down, but the raccoon is far too skittish to cooperate. He'd rather get down himself, but this is his first time on a ladder, and he's unclear on the concept. Finally, the raccoon realizes this is not going to work at all. That's when he finds out climbing down is even harder than climbing up. Once he makes it back down, the raccoon vanishes in the billowing smoke. A moment later, the firefighters climb up on the roof to fight the blaze. They don't even notice when the critter reappears, desperately searching for a way down. Using a ladder has already been ruled out, so the raccoon finds an escape route more suited to his kind.
You got that?
It's quite a first step. The anxious animal catches his breath as he contemplates his next move. But he knows there's only one real option. As the raccoon shimmies down the drain pipe, clinging for dear life, he gets some encouragement from the firemen below.
Let's give this guy a job.
Suddenly, the raccoon stops, and then he does the unbelievable. It may have hurt a little, but the raccoon is okay. 15 feet above the ground, the raccoon realizes it can survive the jump. The fence breaks the fall, and once he's on the ground, the critter scurries away to safety. In the end, the resourceful raccoon got away without so much as a singed whisker. It was a daring escape that left even veteran firefighters wondering, who was that masked man?